episode 8 of my extended series. Um, before before we get into the part I wanted to talk about why I like spirituality. I forgot to mention that I think in my last episode I was talking about how I was talking to my spirit guides and asking them a question um, about making this decision to move to move forward with spirituality and to leave the religion, the cult behind. And I didn't actually. I think I left that apart, but I actually didn't really necessarily get an answer, but I did get a form of an answer, like a synchronicity. There was a video I saw by Abraham Hicks um, that I'm going to share the link to. And it was just perfect timing, and it was very strange because the title of the video had not really given an, what is it? The title of the video didn't really give me an idea about like what the video was going to be about. I just clicked on it, and I thought I was going to get something else, but I ended up getting the answer that or an answer that was related to my question. So I just kind of, detached from talking to my guides, and I decided to just move on. And then I found that literally like right after. So I'll share that in the link below. And the video kind of has another take on manifesting and our ability to manifest. I've learned it at least like maybe three similar explanations by now about the situation I had with my heart center that I felt that led to my conversion story. So I'll send that link below, and that was the answer that I got, and it's what helped me get to get more comfortable pursuing spirituality. But this was, of course, after the fact where I started to like it more and more. So anyway, the reasons why I love spirituality is I have to mention first that the way I got into spirituality, that was just my awakening at the time, and I think everyone's awakening is different for everyone, but the way I was introduced to spirituality was through shadow work, and to me it's the foundation to spirituality because or at least to me it makes sense, and it taught me a lot about good values, good virtues, just simple truths, overcoming fear and taking responsibility, and just like this basic stuff that I honestly needed to know. And I've made videos about the things that I learned on my journey. That's in my shadow work series. That was partly why I started my channel, was to share the shadow work, but it was also highly encouraged by Glitch that I should make a channel, and so I did, and I did some shadow work there because I'm not used to making videos or anything like that, and my friend Expander really did help me get more involved into it initially, and my friend Glitch, he kind of taught me more like one-to-one personally, like his own take on it, but we were both taught by Expander, and that was really helpful. And the way I like shadow work spirituality is because with the type of person that I was and the way that I really needed a lot of healing, and I was just full of fear and anxiety and all this craziness from my past, right? And it was just like overwhelming. It was just really too much, and like to for me to try to how do I say, like, evolve from that was like really really difficult, because the way that we're taught to evolve in this world, or to like improve and self-improve, is very one-sided, and there's not really enough shadow work in society, honestly. And a lot of the values that society values, especially here in the United States, is it's very competitive, it's very success driven and money driven, and just like it's very ego filled, with limited perspectives on what success is, what happiness is, or like people's relationship with money, people's relationship with power. And there's just not enough about, you know, being who you really are, but also how to heal from the identity that you create, to survive, which means that you're actually not being yourself, right? And it's really just the core of who we are, and that's actually where we shine the most, right? It's just that go through we go through life and we don't know how to heal. And that's just I think that's just the story of the whole collective, honestly, is just we go through shit and we don't know how to heal. We don't know how to take care of ourselves, and we don't know how to move forward, right? And all the things that we're supposed to be taught, we weren't taught, and all the institutions of this world have just kind of, just crumbled society more and more. Um, and I kind of saw this way before when I was younger, how just, things don't make sense, and it's like it's the problem itself. Like there's no solution, in the same way that we're trying to pursue these things, but the way that we're going at it is only making it worse. um, and this whole competitive mentality like really gets to people, and people have a hard time taking care of themselves, and being responsible, and managing their emotions, and healing, and being themselves, and making real genuine friendships. It's like everyone's so scattered from themselves, and there's all this expectation on us, and it just really makes the world seem like a very cruel place, especially what I have dealt with. But I love spirituality through the lens of shadow work, because to me that's what makes spirituality. Without a shadow work, it feels ungrounded to me. And it's like people will be awakened, right? But they're not very conscious, and they're ego filled, and that's like a surface level spirituality, which is what you'll usually find scattered all across YouTube, with these fake gurus that think they're conscious, but they just have an ego, and they claim to be awakened, and all this stuff. But it's like an interesting concept, because you don't really recognize it when you haven't done enough inner work to see it for yourself. But that's just where most people start off with, on the surface level, because they don't know how to get deeper. And a lot of people in spirituality are kind of fed up with it, because it's very hard to get results, or it's very hard to grow or develop from it. And it's not because, yeah, to some extent it is, but mainly because there's not enough mature people. But also it's the immature people that get the most likes and views, because it's the most ego filled, which is what people respond to. I think I've mentioned before is that we may have our priorities, our ideas, or our goals, right? But that doesn't matter because your ego has priorities and it has goals, and it's ruling you subconsciously through the programs and limiting beliefs. So, that's very difficult to grow and mature, and to meet your goals when you have all this ego holding you back. You have all this identity holding you back, and even more so, you don't even understand or know the concept of what these things are and how it plays into your vibrational frequency. right? And most people stay stuck at the victim level. This is why we have a lot of people in spirituality, surface level spirituality, mainly for ego driven purposes, either to be some kind of fake influencer guru, or to utilize spirituality as a means of bringing things to their life and manifesting. So, you know, it's there's a lot there's a lot of stuff that is wrong with the surface level community, but you know, it's where a lot of people connect with or end up, because there's some truth in it, but it's just not enough for most people. And in fact, because it's not developed enough or grounded enough, it sometimes um, it actually hurts people, because they don't know how to take the theory and the practice and the research and application right. um, and it actually, you actually have to like study or like get to understand or to know what it is that you're trying to get into, but most people don't. They most people don't want to put in the work, so go figure, you get in what you get out. um, so so understand, like, this is just where my spirituality comes from, is that it comes from shadow work, because we cannot move forward if we are not taking care of the stuff that's hiding, in the back, right? So it's like you're trying to move forward, but like your feet are shackled with a ball and chain. Like, you can't really do much there. Like, your ego is like kind of holding you back in that sense. And it's not that ego is like bad or evil, it's just that we need to become aware of it so we can avoid like the pitfalls and the negative patterns and the karmic loops and things like that. So at a foundational level, I've already talked about these things on my channel, right? And one of the main things that especially made it possible for me, um, where it's just like, how do I say it? To me, the way that I was taught from Gretsch, he made it very practical and made it make sense, and he simplified it, you know. And maybe that's just my experience. I can't really say too much for others, or how other people get their information, or what other mentors that they have, right? But you know, considering that there's many angles to get into spirituality, um, this is my experience. That's just my experience, right? So I have a strong foundation in shadow work, and I believe in shadow work, and it makes sense to me. And there's other stuff there that I also do, like, that's more, I guess you could say, more like spiritual gifts and more like the mystical side of it, um, because I had been through an abusive occult system, you know, seeing these things, like I think Expander had some channeling videos I ran into like a long time ago when I first started looking on his channel. Like, that was interesting, and I love that, and I liked how it made me feel, right? But it's just like I don't really want to, like, I'm like cautious, but like I enjoy it, because I know that I'm not going to allow myself to get sucked into like another belief system or whatever, that doesn't work out for me, and I'm still having a hard time. But that was just me at the time. But I over time, I mentioned this, over time I've learned to like embrace the things that I loved and the things that I liked, and I started to lean more towards just enjoying these things, and just like seeing other people do it, or other people talk about it, and just enjoying it. um, Little did I recognize at the time that I would also have, my own spiritual gifts eventually, or discovering what those are. I hear things. I would hear things about, people having intuition, and people talking to their guides, and people doing all this stuff, and I'm just like, I don't really know what this stuff is. I don't even understand it too much, but I kind of enjoy it and I like it. So, I will observe this, right? But the reason why I want to make a distinction here is because a lot of people get into spirituality, metaphysical, occult stuff, because they want power and they want they want gifts and they want these talents and they want these abilities. And that's what I've seen a lot of gurus try to sell people as a means of like, this is what you can get, this is what you can have, this, and that's how they sell it to people, right? But they kind of leave out like the wisdom you need, the responsibility you're gonna have to take, and just like growing yourself as a consciousness. And it's very similar to like the ego driven desires of a lot of people. It's like where they want the power but they don't want the responsibility. They want to grow but they don't want, they want to have these things but they don't want to grow. And that's how a lot of what spirituality is framed as. Or because people don't understand how to develop their own gifts or how to have connection to divinity, or they don't even know how to do shadow work, like to see people expressing their spiritual gifts, or channeling, or doing tarot, or doing energy work, or light language, like this stuff looks very strange. It looks very strange, and I'm not gonna act like I was like totally, like 100% on board. It's like I enjoy, I'm like observing it, like I'm interested in it. I just don't really know what it is. I just don't know what it is, right? But I kind of learned it, over time, and it's just like I need to just grow myself more, so that way I can open more of, like, you could say, like the metaphorical doors of, feeling energy, working with energy, fixing, or clean up the energy in my own, aura, and things affecting me there, things that I don't even know too much of, or realizing it's affecting me. But like, as I'm growing, I start to figure it out. But yeah, I just wanted to make a distinction. Like, it wasn't my interest in spirituality was not from like an overzealous desire to like have these spiritual gifts. Lots of people go for that, but that wasn't me, really. But yeah, it just, like, shadow work just seemed very practical to me. It helped me, and it was very obvious right away how useful it was. And my friends I met along the way, were really just like my first two mentors, was Glitch and Expander. And I just kind of needed more of a, I guess you could say, like, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear type of thing. And they were exactly, the help that I needed. So it just worked out wonderfully. Right? But anyway, let me think of, like, more obvious things. So yeah, learning about ego helped me understand more about psychology. And I was already interested in psychology. I just didn't really have those classes, like in high school or anything. So that was pretty neat. So I really like the practical applications of where shadow work comes from. It's a psychological thing. It's like working with the shadow is also working with the inner child. It's working with emotions. It's working with healing and the many multifaceted faces and phases of healing. Society only has like a very limited way of what healing is or what it looks like, and things that are very alternative aren't seen as very valid or useful, right? And it's just one of those things where it's like, on the surface level, these things are, I guess you could say, unconventional, right? But if you do put in the work, and if you do try to understand and listen, but just mainly focus on yourself and grow yourself, sometimes you'll start to like figure it out, like, over time, right? But of course, like, this was something I kind of had to like warm up to, because I'm just, I still, like, I'm open-minded. It's just that, I'm not going to let myself be too open because then sometimes that could make it easier for me to be deceived and stuff. And there's lots of fake gurus out there still that are doing this to people who are, very, very open, but they don't really understand. And that's what I mean, is that, like, a lot of spirituality is it's kind of like commercialized. It's like convincing people of like what they can get and what they can have and the possibilities, and not enough about like the real mature stuff that a person needs to like have, the consciousness they need to grow, like the things they need to uncover, the uncomfortable scary stuff that they don't want to look at. So like a lot of surface level spirituality is like very, very watered down. And I've even seen how the self-help community is also taking these spiritual concepts and these occult concepts and just watering it down to make it fit their uh, I guess it could, I don't want to say their agenda, but partially yes, it fits their agenda, but also it doesn't give a person the source material of what it is that they're getting into or what it is that they're working with. It's a way that these gurus uh, try to make it more like digestible in a sense for new people, so that way it doesn't scare them off right away, right? So they don't really, they'll like use these concepts or these words, but they'll change the name or they'll teach it in only certain ways to get more views and likes and clicks because it looks more friendly. And things like occultism can be seen as not good for business, right? And so like they have to switch around terminology, they have to switch around certain words, and that's where the buzzwords come from in spirituality, right? And it's just not enough for people. So, you know, for me, I kind of noticed this right away, how surface level spirituality just, like there was some truth to it, but it just like really wasn't enough. And little did I, that I recognized, but I realized it over time, is just that it was the shadow work. It was the shadow work that was missing. I was already starting my awakening way before I met Expander and Glitch, and so these were concepts I was sort of familiar with, but it didn't really go anywhere. And it wasn't necessarily like frustrating. It was just like a little bit confusing, but it was still interesting, right? But that was something that I decided to pursue. And it was very it was very strange, because it is strange, and it is strange. Like if anyone like criticizes the spiritual stuff for being this and this and that, like I get it, because it really does look that way sometimes, or all the time. And that's, I embrace that, because I don't think anyone's crazy for thinking that it's crazy. I don't think anyone's crazy for thinking all these limited ideas about it, because like it does have a bad reputation because of programming and because of fake gurus, and just like people who give it a bad name, right? But understanding shadow work is like the basis of it. Like you can't really get anywhere like spiritually without doing the shadow work, or if you try to, you know you're gonna make mistakes that only going to your shadow is gonna help you to fix, right? It's So yeah, shadow work's very practical. There's a lot of stuff that gets overlapped. There's a lot of different ideas and concepts that do get overlapped with spirituality, and shadow work. So it's not like necessarily its own thing. There's a lot of psychological, philosophical things that overlap with it. And if you really like that stuff, if you like higher knowledge and higher truths or like different perspectives, like that's obviously, a benefit of that is that it gets you to start thinking, and it gets you to start understanding yourself more, which we need. We need to understand ourselves. If we don't understand who we are, we don't know what it is what we want. And a lot of the things that we think that we want is like programmed by our ego and programmed by society. So, we're programmed to want things, but we're not necessarily like programmed for our own freedom or our own authenticity, or just the good stuff, right? So a lot of people, get the good aspects of them, beat up and messed up, and they don't know how to heal, and now they're, taught, okay, well, this is what you want, and it just causes more problems for society at large. especially because everything in the feminine that's meditative and emotional, and that's still and quiet and mysterious and subconscious. It's also very powerful, but for some reason it's just one of those things that um, many people have a hard time connecting with, and I think it's because there's just not much room for it in society, or there's not like much community for it, but also at the same time it's not very popular, because it's only for people actually who actually give a shit, about improving themselves. And You can learn shadow work without necessarily going into spirituality, but I'm pretty sure that the more you do that, the more you're going to start to open up and start to heal yourself. And aspects of you are going to start coming online. Like for me, it was dreams that really helped me. And my friend expanded his dream interpretation, which has been very helpful in me discovering my gifts. But it's interesting because these are things where the divine feminine is like so mysterious. Little do you recognize or realize like how your subconscious is trying to tell you stuff, and you just don't recognize it. And you may not even see it as spiritual, but there will be some stuff that comes along your path where you start seeing angel numbers, you start having dreams. Sometimes like people's awakenings are more dramatic. Sometimes it's more subtle. Sometimes it can look like all different kinds of things, right? But I've noticed like the healing that's occurred from me doing shadow work. Another reason why I love shadow work is its non-dualistic concept. It really helps depersonalize the things that we find personal, or that our ego finds personal, and that helps us to release it more when we can actually look at things more objectively, but also emotionally, but without being too close to it. But it's done in a way where it's very, very compassionate and understanding, and honest and mature, which is what we need more of, right? And because of the concept of non-duality, there is no the cult mentality doesn't exist in non-dualism, and that's where most of our human cognition and language is foundationally in duality. It's kind of how we associate and see the world, and I've already explained duality in my shadow work series, right? But this is where most people see the world. This is like where most people's consciousness is. And because duality is an illusion, people don't recognize that it's an illusion. So people start to think that things that are illusionary are real, and so they get very overcharged, and they give a lot of energy to things that aren't necessarily true or seemingly true. And they don't know the concepts or how their mind works in order to see things clearly, right? Duality it's in a game. It's a game of illusion, and the people that know better kind of use this in society in real life. And if you understand the concept of duality and how that plays a part into our egos, and how we get identities in these names and these labels and things like that. And it becomes less about navigating life and organizing things, and it starts to become a very personal thing. It starts to become very us versus them. It starts to become very close-minded. And because of that, we can't really see that these differences are only seemingly different, and that we are actually in singularity, and that the things that are seemingly different are really not that different at all. It's just people don't always look into it or think about it that way. It's really just a program thing, right? And this is how people start to form groups and this and that. But this is the foundation of where ego operates. So if people can't even figure out non-duality, it's going to be very hard for them to expand their consciousness because they need to apply that in their lives. This also helps with the concept of being, non-judgmental, right? Like, it's easy to judge when you separate and divide, but when really it's singularity, then you wouldn't be judging, because anything you're judging would just be yourself, which is another concept that I did bring about in my shadow work series already. So I'm not going to repeat that too much. Right? So just like the foundation of non-dualism, I super, super love, because it is very practical, and it really helps us break the illusion of separation and division, which is like why everyone is so polarized and everyone's so divided. And they're also divided from within themselves that way as well, and it becomes an ego thing, it becomes a personal thing, and we can't actually solve problems in a dualistic consciousness, which probably explains why everyone's in a dualistic consciousness, right? Because we got all these problems. All right. So I like spirituality because it's very independent, and it's very free. It doesn't always make sense. It just kind of depends on how you enter spirituality. But for me, shadow work it's what made it make sense. you know, it's where I found a lot that I could relate to, a lot that I could understand. And the way Glitch taught it was very beneficial for me, and my other friends or soul family in that community, which I think many of them are subscribed to my channel, who knew Glitch. I already have the links to their channels, probably like in my about page or on my YouTube. You'll find them. Soothe the Glitch, and I think I have Expander's Rumble channel, and I think also his YouTube channel there. So if anyone's wondering who I'm talking about, that's who I'm talking about. All right. So I noticed, like, in religion, it was very much like you have schedules, you have sets of rules. It's like things that you're told to do. But in spirituality, it's like you get to make these decisions for yourself, right? Religion likes to control people with ego, and they don't want you to know what ego is, right? And that way they can give you all these shadows so they can manipulate you. Not, I wouldn't say all religion, but you know what I mean. Generally speaking, it's just like things that aren't really giving your consciousness freedom to grow. That's holding you back, and we get these programs from many different areas of our life, from like schools, from family, just like society at large, like these institutions that run this world, like business and sports and like military and whatever, like the culture, comes from. That's where we start to get these ego programs that prevent our consciousness from expanding, because we don't know how to heal, or we don't know like how to understand it. And it's interesting that self-help is a multi-billion dollar industry, yet they're actually spirituality is trying to also bring in self-help as well. So we got like traditional self-help, and then we got spirituality self-help, and then of course we have occultism self-help, which occultism is in the astrology sign of Scorpio, which is self-transformation and self-help, right? And those who know, like me, will see that they're taking these concepts in occultism, and they're watering it down to feed it to the masses, and they feed them bullshit, or just like half-truths, or things that are not entirely correct. And then when people try to make that work and it doesn't work, then they say spirituality is bullshit, right? But it's just that their goal is not necessarily to help expand you. It's the goal is to make money. Which it kind of sucks. But if you don't give up, you'll eventually find something that like actually makes sense. But you won't know unless like you actually put forth the work and energy necessary to figure that out. It's these things that are hidden, these things that are in the shadows that isn't very popular, that you have to look at and realize how important this is, or you'll start to find something that like actually makes sense, right? Another thing about what I love about spirituality is like overcoming fear. You know, is a big one. I think I've already talked about this on my shadow work series. But our fear comes from our identity, and it comes from our ego. It comes from that which we don't understand, and then what we don't understand we judge, and then what we judge we get as karma, right? Until we learn how to love the thing that we judge unconditionally, and then we learn, you know, that it's really ourselves, and that it's just another aspect of ourselves that we need to learn to love, right? But then also, when these things go unchecked and unhealed, it becomes like our vibrational frequency, and whatever judgmental programs or beliefs running in the background, that's also creating our vibrational frequency as well, right? And I don't really like the word vibrational frequency because it sounds very strange. Another thing in spirituality that sounds strange is like the terminology that's used sometimes. It's basically like your consciousness, and if that's a weird word to understand, it's like your awareness, right? And there's different levels of this that, you know, are, I guess you could say, it starts to become very practical, but it also starts to become very mystical over time, right? But for someone like me who's just like, who had just started, you know, these things are really interesting. They're very mystical, right? But it's just like I can't relate to it too much because I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there more and more on this path. So it's starting to make a lot more sense over time, right? And what else? It just, I really understand spirituality through the lens of shadow work, so I'm not quite sure like how to make a distinction between the two, because I put them together because that's how I understand spirituality. So I'm not too much like in understanding it, but like the parts I do understand make it foundational, if that makes sense. Like it's like, you know, I got like my own like priorities and my own personal ways of growth, and I'm only gonna pay attention or give my attention to things that are most relative, or things that I can relate to the most, just to me, right? So spirituality is very much like, it's just like take your time kind of thing. You don't have to like rush it, and it's just like, for me, it's like feelings based, and just gravitating towards the things that make sense to you, right? But also it's just something you take your time with, right? You're not really, you know, given, you know, what to do or like what to think necessarily, right? But sometimes people will take that and they'll turn it into that. So, you know, it's just like, if unless you understand, unless you understand, you won't realize it's happening, right? So another thing that I like to mention was that learning psychology was very important because it also helped me understand cult psychology, which I think everyone should learn about, because, you know, one of the things that, you know, spirituality gets criticized for is being culty and being, you know, brainwashing and all that kind of stuff, where it's like full of bullshit. Like, understand cult psychology is very important for you, like as you're traversing anything, right? So it could help protect you from deception, but you also need to get into spirituality more, where it's not necessarily that you have to become over cynical, right? But still allow yourself to explore and to find things that make sense, and to like study and to listen, because like I'm telling you, like a lot of the people in the spiritual community are like full of bullshit. But you can learn a lot, you know, from reading books. So there's different concepts, there's different mentors, there's different people who kind of have a more have a way of like bringing bringing concepts where it's like things are like very cynical to look at, to things where like you can make it more practical, or you could find it in a way that just makes more sense to you, versus just like seeing just a little bit of something that's wrong and then deciding that the whole thing is wrong or the whole thing is messed up. I don't know, very few people actually do that, like put in the work or actually choose to explore. Not everyone is like as sincere, um, right? And even then also, many people are also afraid, right? But there really isn't anything to be afraid of. um, it's just like I get it. It's like I get it. And even in my own exploration and in my own journey, I had like a lot of self-doubt about this stuff, but it was like kind of the thing that just made sense at the time. But like I just really didn't want anything worse to happen, but that hadn't already happened to me, right? And even though I may not under at the time have understand exactly what was happening to me, I'm talking about my awakening, or in the past, or what I was going through, or anything like that. Shadow work was how I was introduced into spirituality. It was part of my awakening. So I guess like in a sense, like I was like pretty lucky to get into it the way that I did, because it really made all the difference. It really did made all the difference. And it gave me a foundation to help me start to see myself more, in a way that made sense, to grow these virtues and values that made sense, understanding these simple truths that I resonated with, and to have an avenue of like exploration, and to learn more about it, to put more time into. Like the more I started to see how practical it was and how helpful it was, the more I wanted to put energy into working on this more. And I really care about this, and I'm really passionate about this, because I know everyone needs this. Regardless if they're, spiritual or not, like everyone wants to self-develop, everyone wants to grow, everyone wants to self-transform. Unfortunately, a lot of these aspects have been hidden from them, and they're hidden in the shadows, right? But those who know, and they see it plain as day. I know, and I see it. I see where things are egotistical. I see where things are culty. I see, where things are not entirely true. I see, how spirituality is very, the corrupt parts of it, where they leave out the divine feminine part of it, which is very strange, and that's why I don't like business. Because like the divine feminine gets kicked out of spiritual businesses and things like that. And what I mean by spiritual is not religious. I mean spiritual as in, expanding consciousness and weakening like unhealthy parts of our ego. It's really, the difference is just the ego that's in something, is the part where if there's too much unhealthy ego, we get distorted personalities, we get distorted realities, we become less authentic, right? Things have a higher chance of becoming culty, and they have a higher chance of being corrupt, and they have a higher chance of being like self-absorbed, and not so much empathetic, or caring so much about other people, or how other people are being affected. And we do this subconsciously, right? Which is why it's very important to do your shadow work, so that you don't end up doing this to other people, that you don't end up in a religious cult, right? Or you don't end up suffering from your own shadows because you don't know how to heal, that you don't end up shadow projecting your fears and insecurities onto others, right? That you don't, you need a good relationship with yourself if you're going to have a good relationship with other people. Um, that's the truth of it. We can only love others to the extent we love ourselves. And just, um, well, there's more practical ways of looking at shadow work and spirituality. There's so many different angles for it to come from. But what I really love about it most of all is its ability to heal oneself, its ability to see through deception, and its ability to overcome fear, and its ability to really just self-improve, but on a multifaceted level, where spirituality is so open that you can bring other stuff into it that could support it and that could help it, which is why it's like, anyone can get into occultism and anyone can get into spirituality, whereas like some belief systems where it's like, oh no, you have to stay here, like this is the box, right? This is the box and you can't leave this box, or you can't look at anything outside of this box, or if you do, something bad's going to happen to you, right? Or if you do this and that's going to happen to you, or there's like all these kinds of threats or these imaginations, things, and sometimes there's actual like threats, right? But spirituality, shadow work, occultism, it's like you can bring things into it that can be innovative, that can be like, that could actually grow and expand it. Like a lot of belief systems only want things that see from its perspective and not anything that can add to it or take away from it, but spirituality is very much a very personal thing that is very personal and really only works with what resonates with you. And I think that's the beauty of it, of just how much it varies and how many, angles to look at it and just what makes sense. And there's no one really, telling you what to do other than yourself, right? But this is why it's like very important that we do the shadow work, so that way as we're navigating life and as we're navigating these things, that we are more centered and grounded in our interpretation of these things and understanding these things. We interpret things through our ego, right? But a lot of us have an unhealthy ego, so it's very difficult to try to understand things or interpret things when we have a programmed ego that is so used to looking at things in a very limited and rigid way. So that's why for like anyone from anywhere, from any walk of life, like understanding like the core aspect of themselves and how they function, at least like psychologically, and understanding how the mind works, how the mind sees illusionary things as real, can be super, super helpful to like anyone, to anyone really, right? Which is why they take these concepts and they bring them to other labels, and then they water them down and then they sell it to you, because that's how they're making money, or that's how they're deceiving people. Or it also discourages people and also makes people very cynical of spirituality, or these things in occult, or these things, or these new ways of thinking. These things really do not have to be separate and divided. If we go back to the concept of non-dualism, these things don't have to be separate and divided. A lot of the reasons why these names and labels are separated and divided is just to give us a way of navigating like the world around us and life in general, because that's how our human cognition and language understands things, like at a foundational level, right? But there's another reason why, because like ego doesn't want to change the way it sees itself. It doesn't like to change. It doesn't want to be in singularity. So it wants to say, well, this is different from this and this is different from this. So anything that's like bringing it close together, or anything that relates to it, like, people who identify with one type of thing doesn't want to lose its identity. So it's like, okay, so now we have to break these up. So for instance, like there's science, and then there's like spirituality science, and then there's like pseudoscience, and there's like all these different things, because like science doesn't want to lose its identity of science. It doesn't want to change how it sees itself, because science can feel very opposed to things that are very mystical and magical, right? So, and that's why we'll have some people that try to bridge these things together and say like, hey, these things are not that different, or like, hey, we can understand, these mystical concepts, with a way of looking at it through a more scientific lens, right? But then these things have their own paradigms. They have their own way of thinking. They have their own limitations that make it very difficult to traverse new territories or new ideas. And they're very scared of new ideas. Because it starts to feel personally threatened, or like the concept or idea starts to feel personally threatened. But if we actually go back in history, you know, like a lot of the information that we have, came from people who were open-minded, came from people who weren't just scientists, but they were scientists and they were inventors and they were mystics and they were philosophers. Like these people, like, they weren't just in one thing. It's like they were interested in a whole bunch of stuff, and that's how they discovered a lot of the things that we know now, right? That's just like a bigger a bigger way of seeing things. But that's what spirituality is supposed to be. Um, it's supposed to be open. It's supposed to be free. It's supposed to allow new things. It's supposed to go into the shadows. It's supposed to self-transform. It's supposed to reach new heights and awarenesses. It's supposed to grow, right? It's not something that's contained. It's not something that's against another thing. It's something that chooses to be like actually humanitarian. It's like actually supposed to help humanity. It's supposed to be beneficial for everyone. That's just being a good person, right? But like I said, it's like these people who don't do the shadow work, who don't want to look into these things, they bring ego to this, and it looks like they're like hypocritical, or it gives spirituality a bad name. It's just that they just don't do the shadow work, right? And I want to also like emphasize that this is like the main thing missing from mainstream spirituality, but it's also the main thing missing from real life in general. It really sucks because people are trying really hard to try to improve themselves, but because they don't have an understanding of who they are or how they function, it makes it very hard for them to go into their shadows. It makes it very hard for them to get their priorities straight, and how to take care of themselves, and how to deal with their emotions. And it's just so multifaceted. It really is multifaceted. Um, and that's why it's kind of hard to talk about, because of how big it is and how vast it is and how ubiquitous it is, and just how the concepts apply to just real life, and not just something that's like an idea. Um, right? And I love the possibilities. I love, looking at these things. I like seeing how this gives me an idea, or a different way of looking at the world, where it seems like we can get closer to ourselves. We can get closer to healing. We can get closer to divinity. And especially for me, divinity felt like something that was like very far away from me, you know. And just wanting to learn more about it, just wanting to learn more of myself. But of course, like with the concept of non-dualism, like there is no separation and division for me and divinity, the way some belief systems would like us to think, right? I really like how it brings closer, how to see ourselves in a closer way, where we're not as separate and divided from good things in this world. We just don't understand. We don't understand. So it's like a game of hide and seek with yourself, And yeah, it's like it's just, I don't know how to say it. It's just following the things that I like. And it's just as simple as that. A lot of people have a hard time even doing that. I also did too. Like, I had a lot of self-doubt and a lot of fear, but luckily I found my footing and I made it work for me, and I've grown a lot. But anyway, like, if you know me, or you want to know me, I do try to live stream often, and I have a lot of videos in the past. And if you have any questions, I can help you. I could give resources and things like that. I can help you understand things differently. Oh yeah, I also had like another teacher. There's a channel on YouTube called actualize.org. I know it sounds like a website, but that's the channel name. Um, and the guy who runs the channel, Leo, he has a lot of great, spirituality, mysticism stuff, but he teaches it very intellectual, um, which I don't know if people can handle listening to him talk and talk and talk, because that's what he does. But he's taught me a lot about the more, I guess you could say, the more foundational concepts of spirituality, like ego and cult psychology and non-dualism and just like other practical stuff too. But over time, like he's grown a lot too, and you can kind of see his content change and get deeper over time as he's exploring these concepts and stuff like that. But yeah, he's a brainiac. He's a brainiac, and he's not for everyone. He's not for everyone. Because many people have like a hard time just like listening in general, right? But I put in the work and put in the time, to watch his lectures, um, and I could just like, I can tell like this guy really cares about the impact he's having on the world around him and stuff. Oh yeah, another reason why I like spirituality is that it grows your authenticity, and you start to see where other people are authentic or independent or inauthentic. It also teaches you compassion. It teaches you how to love more. It teaches you to see yourself, um, like in a more balanced way. We can get stuck in our heads. We can get stuck in our victimhood. We can get stuck in all these areas. But I really had discovered how, because of how multifaceted it is, it really allowed me to grow things upon itself, into other names or categories or other labels, because they just apply and they fit so well with what it is that I'm learning. So it just gave me a really great foundational way. And also the community has also made it so much easier for me to talk about things that are hard to talk about. It's made me feel less alone, and it's giving me hope. And I mean, I'm still a bit shy, and it's still a bit of self-doubt, and I'm still, growing myself. But every time I'm doing this and I'm going outside my comfort zone, I gain more of myself, and I help other people gain more of themselves too, right? So as I'm doing my own personal work, everyone else gets benefited too. Spirituality has helped me to self-express, and it's taught me it's just taught me just so much that I guess you could say, like, it helped me find ways to teach myself, if that makes sense. It's helped me like relate to others. It's helped me relate to myself. It's helped me to decode and to disassemble like all the old programming that I've had, right? And it's done it for me in a way where it's pretty easy for me to learn, because I utilize the resources that I have available, whether on books or online. And there's so many resources, like there's so many, we just need to connect more to like help it make sense, and like talk to each other more, and to look into things and to go outside our comfort zone and talk about these things, because if we don't talk about them, then we don't improve. I'm not sure what else to say here, but I hope that made sense. I hope that made sense. But I'm excited. I'm very excited, and a lot of things are starting to make sense for me now. And I can't wait to pursue this even more. So that's the end of this video. So I don't know if I'll make another video. This might be the end. I think this might be the end of the series. I can't think of anything else. So yeah, I'll see you guys later.